Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program and the Interplanetary Chase. You join us straight as we left off, where we've only just managed to get ourselves into a orbit around Ike to essentially park our station here for the sake of possibly sending a refuel mission, as I personally do not believe we have enough juice to make it back to Kerbin. Of course, we need to fix our orbital inclination because it's a little bit off-centre and we're trying to get a nice equatorial orbit in order to simplify the whole process. Having said that, now we are in a equatorial orbit and seemingly experiencing some graphical problems. I must apologise about that. This is a bit of a running theme in this video, but thankfully, of course, we're in space and there's not really much to look at. Like I was saying, now we are in an orbital, equatorial orbit, so that means we can actually send down our second lander. And of course, just moving our Kerbal into the lander now. Who better to send than, of course, Munrik, our mustachioed moon landing maverick. And of course, Ike is a moon, so naturally we're going to send him down to the surface to hopefully collect some science and, in a perfect world, obviously dock back up with the station and transfer the data back over. And of course we are doing a few crew reports and EVA reports on the way down as we are passing over different biomes. We're transmitting them where we can. On the note of performing science, I need to mention, off camera, there have been a few, what do you call them, material processing bay experiments going on, and I believe we've completed about 3 or 4 of those, netting in around 1,500 to 2,000 science points. I know, it's insane, and even then that's just on top of everything else we've transmitted and are about to bring home, so hopefully bring home at the very least. Who knows what will happen as we do manage to touch down on the surface of Ike here. It's a little bit of a hilly area, however the landing legs have caught us and prevented us from tipping over. So of course we're going to collect that data and transmit what we can just to save some space. And of course get Mumrick down on the surface here. We've already collected a surface sample from a ladder, so we can plant a flag here just to, of course, celebrate the occasion of an Ike touchdown. And we can get Mumrick back on board the lander here. And of course we need to set the station as a target and wait for it to fly over us. Thankfully we have put the station in a prograde orbit this time. We learned from our mistake from our orbits around Una. So thankfully it should be a relatively easy dock, as of course we don't need to worry about having essentially twice the closing speed that we otherwise normally have, or normally would have even. And of course 5 kilometers away from the station. It should be a relatively simple one. Once again, within around a kilometre now, within a kilometre, and of course we have a closing speed of around 35 metres per second, which we could easily kill with a retrograde suicide burn here, as you can see. We did miss the retrograde marker slightly, and that was my mistake. However, we have managed to get our own relative velocity into a nice place, which is slow enough for us to enable our RCS thrusters to do the rest of the manoeuvring, so no problem. Now of course we are docking on the bottom, once again just to make sure everything is nice and symmetrical. I have had an idea, of course, where what we can do is we can of course transfer the science from this particular lander to the station, a bit like we have with the lander on top there. And we can get rid of all of the liquid fuel from the landers, pour those into our station tanks, and get the oxidizer from the station tanks into the lander, because of course we have nuclear engines, not rocket engines. The only things that need oxidizer are the landers, which means that as it stands, that oxidizer is just dead weight. And of course we move our Kerbals back to the station as well, and then we can subsequently get rid of these landers and deorbit them using the monopropellants they have left, and essentially once again get rid of dead weight. As you can see, we are quite literally just refilling the station as I just mentioned, with any liquid fuel the landers happen to have left, and we'll trade that of course with the oxidizer. Not before, of course, we get Mumrick out, which we've already done. We've transferred him back to the station. Annoyingly, I did forget to fill this particular lander with oxidizer. I think there is a little bit in there, but of course I think it's actually the second one that has the most left. No matter. Obviously, we're slowly bringing our periapsis down with that tiny little bit of monopropellant we have left. Thankfully, it will be enough. I suppose what also helps is the fact that Ike, as a planet, or a moon better yet, is quite hilly. So of course the peaks are quite unpredictable and we could just crash down at any time, right? Another reason that I obviously put a drone core on this, because I did intend to get rid of it at some point. I was wanting, in an ideal world, of course, to use this as a kind of return vehicle for our Kerbals. It is capable of you know, withstanding atmospheric re-entry. It's got a heat shield, it's got enough control, but unfortunately, you know, baby steps, of course. We need to get rid of these because we don't have enough fuel to make it back to Kerbin, so we won't have a chance to re-enter as that crashes down and leaves a lot of debris, which I totally don't clean up through the tracking station. Anyway, let's get rid of that oxidizer, shall we? Or at least what's left of it. Once again, just pouring this into the lander's tanks here. We have 3 of them, so we have plenty of space. That's the first one done, then we'll turn off flow, and of course start moving it into the other fuel tank. I do make a bit of a mistake here, as you can see. I thought I could kind of empty them into both tanks at the same time, but unfortunately it was not to be. However, we do have all the oxidizer on board now on this lander, which we do not need. Everything has been moved out, including our Kerbals and our science. And once again, we could just start burning. Not even burning, we just start pushing ourselves retrograde using our CS thrusters and this awesome little lander, which has netted us a lot of science. I'm kind of sad to be getting rid of it, but once again, needs must, and we need to think about getting home. So yeah, once again, this lander will eventually crash down onto the surface, and that will be the end of that. As you can see, we've completed another round of research from the lab as well, which we are transmitting back to Kerbin. We do have quite good signal here, all things considered, because we're currently in a Juna transfer window, which means we're the closest we can get to Kerbin, and a transfer to Juna will require the most efficient amount of delta V. So, of course, I think that has been timed rather well, because like I mentioned earlier on, of course, we have 500 more science. We need to build a refueler, because once again, I'm not convinced that this particular amount of fuel the station currently has will be enough to push itself back home and circularize. I'm not too concerned about getting it back into the atmosphere, because of course it's not designed to do that. We will need to send up a data collection vessel to, of course, get the science and, more importantly, our Kerbals back home. And just trying to build a fairing here to act as a bit of a nose cone, although I'm not having much luck. And eventually we just kind of bite the bullet, and it's not necessarily flush, but it will do, right? And of course, fuel lines to make sure we can transfer fuel to and from the docking port and the RCS port there, followed by an orange tank, even though it's not orange anymore. You can actually recolour it, I think, in stock Kerbal Space Program. I'm using restock, so I'm not necessarily sure if that's just exclusive to vanilla, but still, some solar panels to ensure that we retain power. Now, of course, currently this vessel is unmanned, but eventually I will decide that it might need to be a manned mission, because the last thing we want to do is for this particular thing to lose signal to the space center. And of course, we don't have our comms network around Juna yet. It doesn't quite reach that far. I mean, of course, we did have signal, but I don't want to risk it dropping out, where it might be a little bit intermittent in such a critical mission. So we're going to put I think, possibly a mainsail, but we decide against it. And we do decide, of course, to use some of the new rocket parts we have unlocked, which entails slightly bigger fuel tanks, which is always positive. I believe these are the S3 tanks, the Kerbaldine S3s. And of course we will need to stack them, as we don't quite have the longer ones yet, but of course that doesn't matter. We can always put an engine plate. Of course we don't have engines big enough for this just yet. However, I do have a design in mind. I was initially thinking quad bobcats until I remembered that we do actually have mainsail engines, and we can put those in their compact form, which should be small enough to, of course, fit inside the engine plate, which they very much are. And that's going to give us absolutely ridiculous amounts of thrust, which is exactly what we need to get this absolutely stonking refueling vessel into orbit and beyond. And of course, some SRBs as well, just to assist, followed by some nose cones, and just make sure our staging is correct. And of course, given that this is quite a long rocket, we do want to strut things up a little bit just to make sure it's not overly wobbly during our ascent. Furthermore, we need some Separatrons to pull these things away from a rocket when they run out of fuel. Of course, some fins for atmospheric stability on the way up. And some launch clamps, where this is quite a heavy vessel. I'm afraid if we just drop it straight onto the launch pad, it will just blow it up. So obviously that's the last thing you want, given how much fuel this thing is carrying. Saving it as a new vessel now. And once again, before we do launch, I'm going to redo that top section because I would actually prefer this to be a manned mission. As much as we only have one pilot on standby at the moment, being Valentina, I think this is a bit of a necessary evil, as once again, I do not want to lose signal, and you're not going to lose control if you have a manned mission, right? So of course, docking port on the top, followed by some RCS thrusters. And of course, we do need to think about putting some batteries on as well, which I have kind of forgot to do, so that's that. Followed by some solar panels on the bottom for the sake of energy generation. Just making sure everything is as it should be. It's clipping underground, which is the last thing we need, so we're going to fix that. Possibly add some parachutes on the SRBs to recover those. And sort our staging, and I think we're more or less ready to go. We're going to put Valentina, our last pilot, into this particular rocket, and we are good to go. So as you can see, this thing goes very quickly with those two massive SRBs and 4 mainsails. So much to the point where if we go full throttle on the mainsails, we'll run out of liquid fuel before the SRBs have finished burning, of course, which is the last thing we need. So as you can see, we kind of let off the liquid fuel boosters and let the SRBs bring our ascent up. I'm not overly concerned as to how good our orbit is, because we're only going to be performing a Kerbal ejection towards Juno and transfer over to Juno. Just coasting up towards our apoapsis finish our circularization, which we've just done, and of course now we can think about setting up a transfer manoeuvre. Once again, we are currently in a Juno transfer window. I have fast forwarded time a little bit just to ensure that we can get the most efficient encounter. Currently fighting with the Moon and Minmus here, but once again we have managed to achieve an encounter. So of course all we need to do now is point towards our manoeuvre nodes. I'm quite happy with the updated manoeuvre node planner as well, because of course it accounts for additional stages, which means that the burn time has accounted for both of our mainsail stage, which of course was very close to running out of fuel, and our current nuclear engine stage. And of course, as you can see, the burn time, the estimated burn time, is more or less what it kind of estimated it to be in the first place, which is good. With 200 meters per second left on that burn. And we seem to have overshot our encounter slightly, which means we will need to spend a little bit of fuel burning retrograde just to bring our two closest encounters together. As you can see, our closest approach is now decreasing in separation. And there we have our lovely little Juno encounter. Not a problem. Now, of course, we're going to switch our focus to Juno and see if we can do some orbital corrections here, some fine-tuning to obviously give us a Ike encounter, as of course that's where the station is parked. I'm trying to get our periapsis to be more or less 50 kilometers, as you can see. I'm not necessarily having a good time doing so, but it's nothing I shouldn't be able to do given some time. And as you can see, I think that is more or less the best we're going to get without, of course, some manoeuvreless corrections here. So we're going to point towards our manoeuvre, more or less. Time warp to our manoeuvre nodes. Of course, we'll point manoeuvre grades? That's not a thing, on our nav ball. Finish the burn with our nuclear engines, and there we go. We now have a very, very close pass with Ike. For some reason, I keep on mistaking Ike with Dres because they look pretty similar, but I know that's very much not the case. When I was planning this mission, I was thinking, well, how do I get from Dres to Juno, you know, or vice versa? Why is the Delta V requirement so high? And I was like, oh, well, you know, it would help if they were in the same kind of planetary system, wouldn't it? So, my mistake. And of course, Val can do a couple of experiments, which we have done and transmitted what we can. As you can see, we are now burning to try and circularise our orbit around Ike and obviously capture ourselves. I'm going to assist this burn with some RCS because, once again, the nuclear engine isn't exactly the most powerful. And we do seem to accidentally perform that burn a little bit too well as we complete our burn before the manoeuvre node, and as a result our orbit is a little bit elliptical. And it's not quite what we wanted it to be, so of course we will do a couple of corrections just to ensure that we do manage to get a nice little rendezvous with our station. As you can see, we've matched our apoapsis now quite nicely, so of course we need to... I was going to think about coasting up to it until I saw that the encounters were moving closer together, so I was wondering if we might have a chance of actually rendezvousing with the station through these particular means, but I don't think that is the case, as of course it's quite unpredictable. So we are just going to finish circularising. We have managed to match our orbits, and of course from now I can just burn towards the station. And what I'm trying to do is, of course, I'm trying to get our apoapsis a little bit higher up to possibly allow the station to catch up to us as we just go back into the tracking station here and get rid of the rear stage of the station, which was actually left in orbit. And as you can see, we have a very, very close encounter now. There's our station about 3 kilometers away, 3 to 4 kilometers. So of course we're going to kill our vertical speeds here, which should hopefully allow us to, of course, match our orbital velocities. I think we just transmitted some data, and of course we're about 500 meters away now. As we just time warp towards the station a tiny little bit more, and kill our velocity relative to the thing. And here we go, we can now switch to our RCS docking modes. Going to point the station progrades just to make it a little bit easier to identify, you know, where we need to park this thing. So of course we're going to point 90 degrees, which is the same heading as our station here. Move ourselves downwards a tiny little bit, and see if we can move this thing forwards into our dock, which we have done without any problems. So of course we can switch off that engine, transfer out the fuel from our refueling vessel. It's not much, but if I remember correctly, it will give us roughly 500 more meters per second worth of Delta V, which is quite important as we move Valentina into the station here. We're also going to move out some monoprop, which we have done there, of course. And of course we can undock this thing now, and where it doesn't have a drone core, it has no control, so annoyingly we just need to burn away from that thing slightly. That shouldn't be a problem though, because of course with 1,500 meters per second of Delta V, we should be able to get home. We might need to plan our manoeuvres quite carefully, because you can do it with 1,000. However, you'll be cutting it by an incredibly fine margin here. However, that doesn't stop us from, of course, transmitting a little bit more data. So that's another 500 worth of science points, assuming we can maintain enough electric charge. And as you can see, it most certainly is. So another 500 worth of science is more than welcome. Now, as you can see, we are in a Juna transfer window once again. We need to do a Juna progrades burn, or in our case, Ike progrades. Or retrograde, sorry, Ike retrogrades. And as you can see, we've got a very close approach to Kerbin, and we now have an encounter. Now, I am a little bit worried about our method of circularizing, so I'm not quite sure if we'll have enough fuel to do so. I mean, once again, we're going to be approaching Kerbin at orbital speeds of the Sun, so of course we need to be quite careful. I do have a little plan. It's a bit ambitious, and let's just say what I maybe plan on doing, the station isn't exactly designed to do, but of course needs must, and you'll see what our plan is. And of course we do have our Kerbin encounter, and you're going to see what I want to do now. We're going to fine-tune our orbit just a little bit. Firstly, we want it to be equatorial, and ideally prograde. As you can see, we are coming in from the correct side of Kerbin. Let's just warp towards our manoeuvre here. Just bring it down a little bit. I think the moon kind of messed up our plan, but that's not a problem. And here we go. So of course we can use our RCS thrusters to bring our periapsis down to 65 kilometers. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to attempt an aerobrake in Kerbin's atmosphere with this absolute monstrosity, as that should obviously arc our ejection downwards and assist us with circularizing. I would have done it lower, however I don't trust this thing to survive the orbital or atmospheric, better yet, heating. And of course, having a look at our lab, we do have another 300-ish worth of science points to do that our brave scientists have managed to work out on our way back home. Transmitting that, as you can see, and done. That is actually a nice 410 additional science points. And we're just transmitting all of our crew, or transmitting, I must apologise, transferring our crew to the furthest points back in the station here, just to make sure that if anything does blow up, it will be the things at the front. Meaning that our crew may or may not be okay. And as we time warp closer to our periapsis, just fixing our roll, and we are getting to that point where we're about to see if our cruel atmosphere is about to claim another crew, as we decide it might be a better idea to point retrograde and start burning our nuclear engines now, just to slow us down a little bit, and of course mitigate the effects of atmospheric re-entry. Thankfully, our aerobrake has worked, and of course all we need to do now is coast back up to the apoapsis and bring our periapsis above the atmosphere, and we will have a nice little Kerbin capture. And as you can see, we have about 400 meters per second worth of delta V left. And of course our periapsis is now 100 kilometers, which is exactly where we left. And I'm hoping we can park this thing back in a 100 by 100 kilometer orbit. Of course, we did accidentally pass our periapsis and end up with a moon encounter, which is the last thing we need, given what we're trying to do. So we did need to burn a little bit earlier than, of course, we would have liked. Need to bring our periapsis back up to 100 kilometers because of the unfortunate timing of that previous manoeuvre. And here we go. We're just going to burn whatever fuel we have left, along with a little bit of monopropellant. We are now out of fuel, so we have a 100 kilometer by 1.3 million orbit, which is not ideal. However, of course, our Kerbals are now in orbit above Kerbin, which means that another refueling mission should be relatively simple. And of course, we're out of pilots, as our last pilot sent up was Valentina to, of course, refuel our Kerbals around Ike. So we're attaching a drone core to this thing, followed by Reflectron passive antenna. Once again, I keep on calling them Reflectrons, but I don't think they are called Reflectrons. They were in remote tech, but not a problem. Once again, just a slight little modification to this thing, and we're away. Just making sure we match our orbital planes. We break through the atmosphere rather nicely. Get rid of the SRBs. I think first things first, we need to achieve orbit before we can think about adjusting our periapsis and apoapsis along with our inclination, because I don't think it's a completely equatorial orbit we have going on the station there. As we begin our first manoeuvre node. Just pushing out our apoapsis to match that of our station, of course. And when that's done, of course, we can think about how we're going to catch the station, or how we're going to let the station catch up to us. Because it's, of course, an unmanned mission with one of the first generation unmanned control units, we do only have prograde and retrograde modes on the nav ball, which is a little bit annoying, but it's nothing we can't work with. Of course, pushing our apoapsis up now, we had a little bit of a close encounter there, as you can see. Although because we've matched orbits, it doesn't really seem to be changing. So what I'm thinking is, of course, because the manoeuvres are so close together, I might be able to push out the periapsis a little bit more, or apoapsis, sorry, and allow the station to catch up to us. As you can see, that has actually worked like an absolute charm. We're now 20 kilometers away from our target. And of course, we just need to catch up to it. As we're getting ready to point prograde, or retrograde, sorry, just to kill our relative speeds. And I think we've done so very nicely, given that we're only 600 meters away now. So of course, we're trying to get our prograde marker to match that of the station, just so we know more or less where we're going to end up. As we correct our heading to prepare for another docking. And we do so with RCS because I don't really think we're in a position to use the nuclear engine at the moment. I think we're a little bit too close. And I don't want to risk slamming into the thing after so long. So we manoeuvre upwards and prepare to dock. And we missed the docking port at first. However, we do manage to dock ourselves and begin the fuel transfer. As you can see, we have plenty of liquid fuel this time, and we're going to give that back to the station. And that is all done. And of course, we do have a little bit of monoprop that we can transfer out as well. I do intend on, of course, deorbiting this thing, or not necessarily deorbiting it, but at least dipping our periapsis into the atmosphere and allow it to either burn up or eventually crash down. And as you can see, that is exactly what's going on now. The moment we bring our periapsis beneath 70 kilometers, then it's all done. And as you can see, we're just making sure we've actually dipped that periapsis down to 70 kilometers, or 60, sorry. And that will eventually re-enter the atmosphere and either burn up or crash down. Now, of course, with this fuel, we do need to bring the station's periapsis back down to 100. And that is so far so good. Of course, we pass our periapsis by quite a long shot during that burn, so we need to go back round to the next pass and give it another try. Of course, we are helping that with our monopropellant, and we now have a nice 100 by 100 orbit. And that is our work done, of course. So all we need to do now is construct a vessel of some description which has enough crew capacity to bring 6 Kerbals home, and of course enough storage for all of our data. And what I was trying to do with this was I was trying to put 2 command pods inside of a fairing to act as some kind of some kind of protection for re-entry there, but ultimately we do have a bit of trouble doing it, and I'm trying to figure out a way of putting an adapter on top of this command pods here, because it doesn't seem to be particularly flush. However, we do manage to, of course, fix that with the offset tool, followed by a reaction wheel and an antenna, because once again this does need to be unmanned on the way up, otherwise we won't have enough crew capacity. Of course we need some experiment storage units. Wonderful. And a experiment return unit, followed by a parachute. Although, of course, we will need to dock with our vessel, so we're going to replace that parachute with a docking port. And I think we can put some parachutes around where that adapter is. And of course, heat shields. And we can enclose this all in a fairing, which is absolutely lovely. Of course, once again, 4 parachutes and drogue chutes, because we need to make sure this thing touches down softly, given all the sensitive equipment it's carrying. And we don't want to kill our crew after such a long mission. And of course, drone call, which we did forget to put on, but we've got that now. Just making sure our struts are nice and attached. Some batteries, just in case. And of course we can begin building our orbital stage. Of course, RCS, rocket fuel, poodle engines, some extra RCS thrusters. Redoing our fairing here just to make sure it's nice and flush, which it is. Followed by an adapter. And of course some bigger S3 fuel tanks. And we are once again going to use the big engine plate in quad modes with 4 mainsail engines, as that seems to have been a relatively good kind of proven setup. Some decouplers on the side with some hammer SRBs to assist, some parachutes on top with some separatrons to pull them away as and when required. And just rejigging our staging here, because once again that's not completely correct. We will put some fins to assist with manoeuvring. Only 2 clamps this time, because it's not quite as heavy as the previous vessel we built. Now I'm currently wrestling with trying to reroute the vessel, because of course we would like the new route to be the probe core, although I'm struggling a little bit, and I do manage to achieve it in the end. I'm not particularly sure how, because as you can see it's a little bit of a tedious process. But of course we do manage to find the root parts towards the end, and move it all back into place. We do lose our docking port, but we can just attach that back, followed by our RCS thrusters. Of course, do manage to reroute everything. We save this particular vessel. Once again, redo our staging, because rerouting has kind of changed the order a little bit. And of course, finish our fairing. Make sure that no Kerbals are on board, and I think we are... of course, we need to redo the fins and clamps. And I think we're more or less ready to go. So up we go. I'm not particularly concerned about the time of day of which we launch, because our station is in its parked orbit now, 100 by 100 kilometers. As we go up and match our apoapsis. As we begin to circularise, our mainsail stage runs out of fuel. As you can see, there is the station. And we finally managed to circularise. And all I'm trying to do now is match our inclinations, because once again we are a tiny little bit off, but it's not too bad. Problem is, what we need to do now is we need to go backwards, but in order to do that we could either push our periapsis out to allow the station to catch us, or our apoapsis, sorry, or just burn backwards for lazy way. And we do decide to do that, but of course the problem with that is that completely destabilises our orbit and brings our periapsis down to within the atmosphere, which means we will crash down. However, of course, we have rendezvoused with the station, we've matched orbital velocities, which means that we should be okay now. And of course, we just need to park this thing on the rear docking port as we position ourselves to do so. Push ourselves down into the docking port, or miss it once again. This is a running theme. And we are docked, so of course, just going to time warp into the light side of Kerbin here as we begin our crew transfer, which is all done. 6 Kerbals on board our re-entry vessel. We're going to collect all the data we can, although we're having some difficulty doing so. So what we will need to do is firstly keep all of the experiments here. Everything we have transmitted, I believe we already have done. Just working our way through. Lovely. And of course, we will need Munrik to, or not Munrik, sorry, Albert, our scientist at EVA, to take all that data and store it, or at least as much as he can store here in our re-entry vessel. And as you can see, there's quite a lot left. So we will need to send up another vessel with higher data capacity to come and collect that. But we've done what we can. All our crew are on board. We have plenty of science on board. And now we are preparing for a re-entry. So of course we're burning retrograde to kill as much speed as we can. Pointing retrograde with our reaction wheels to hold that heading as we begin our re-entry back into Kerbin's atmosphere, after what I believe was a 4-year mission of an in-game time, as we pop all of our chutes here to slow us down as much as we can. Drogue chutes pop, followed by our main parachutes. And this is going to be a splashdown. Although given how long our Kerbals have been away, I think a nice bath in Kerbin's nice warm oceans is much welcome. And oh my goodness me, after recovering that vessel, we have earned 2,500 science, taking us up to a grand total of 5,379, which of course is on top of everything we've transmitted, including the lab experiment. So as you can see, 6 Kerbals home, plenty of ribbons to award. Now Albert has got Research X, Endurance, Ike EVA, Ike Orbital EVA, and First Ike Orbit. He's got Juna EVA, Juna Orbital EVA, First Juna Orbit ribbon, First Sun Orbit ribbon, and the Heavy Vehicle ribbon. Now, Kerbal McKerbal Face, Research X, Mach 3, First Ike Orbit, First Juna Docking, First Flag on Juna, First Juna Surface EVA, as he was our Kerbal we landed, First Landing on Juna of course, First Juna Atmosphere ribbon, Endurance ribbon, Juna EVA ribbon, Juna Orbital EVA, First Juna Orbit, First Sun Orbit, Kerbin EVA, Kerbin Orbital EVA, and Heavy Vehicle ribbon. Now Mumrick, Research X, First Ike Docking, First Flag on Ike, First Ike Surface EVA, First Landing on Ike, Ike EVA, Ike Orbital EVA, First Ike Orbit ribbon, Endurance ribbon, Juna EVA, Juna Orbital EVA, First Juna Orbit, First Sun Orbit, and a Heavy Vehicle ribbon. Now Valentina, Research X, Mach 3, Ike Docking, Ike Orbital EVA, Endurance ribbon, Ike EVA, Dangerous EVA, Juna Sphere of Influence ribbon, Sun Orbit ribbon, Kerbin Orbit ribbon, Heavy Vehicle Launch ribbon, and 20% SRB ribbon. Bill has got Research X, Splashdown ribbon, Ike EVA, First Ike Orbital EVA, First Ike Orbit, Endurance ribbon, First Juna EVA, First Juna Orbital EVA, First Juna Orbit, First Sun EVA, First Sun Orbital EVA, First Sun Orbit, Heavy Vehicle ribbon, and Kerbin Docking ribbon. And last but not least, Jeb, who's got Research X, First Ike Orbit, First Ike EVA, Endurance, First Juna EVA, Juna Orbital EVA, First Juna Orbit, First Sun Orbit, Heavy Vehicle ribbon, and Kerbin Docking. As we X out of that. Now we are coming up to the end of today's episode, so I'll leave you with this lovely look at how decorated our Kerbals now. If you did enjoy today's episode, I know it was a bit of a longer one, but still, please do like and subscribe for more Kerbal Space Program and aviation related content. Once again, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.